of the defendant beyond all doubt or to a mathematical certainty. A reasonable doubt means just what it says. It is a doubt of a fair-minded, impartial juror who is honestly seeking the truth. It is a doubt based upon common sense and reason. It does not mean a vague or arbitrary doubt, but it is a doubt for which you can give a reason based on consideration of the evidence or lack of evidence, a conflict in the evidence, or any combination of these. After considering all the facts and circumstances of this case, if your minds are wavering, unsettled, or unsatisfied, then that is a doubt of the law, and you must find the defendant not guilty. But if no reasonable doubt exists in your minds about the defendant's guilt, then you may convict the defendant. If the state does not prove the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, your duty would be to find the defendant not guilty. My role is to determine the law that applies to this case. Then I will instruct you on the law that you must apply to the facts in reaching a verdict. I'm giving you some of these instructions now, and I will give you more detailed instructions at the conclusion of the trial. You, the jury, have a very important role. You must decide the facts of the case from the evidence presented and then apply the law that I give you to those facts. Evidence is how a fact is proved or disproved. Evidence can be either testimony or exhibits. Testimony is what you hear from people who take the witness stand and swear to tell the truth. However, the questions the lawyers ask the witnesses are not evidence. Exhibits are documents, photographs, and other physical items that may be admitted during the trial. Now, the object of the trial is to discover the truth. During the trial, I will either admit or exclude evidence according to the rules of evidence. These rules are designed to aid in discovering the truth by making sure you consider only the best and highest evidence. The lawyers are advocates for their clients, and they have a duty to represent their clients to the best of their ability. They must follow the rules of law, trial procedure, and evidence during the trial. They may make motions or objections if they believe that any rule is not being followed. Please remember that what the lawyers say in making or responding to these objections is not evidence. I will either admit or exclude the evidence according to these rules. If the lawyers make an objection and I overrule it, that means the evidence is admitted and you may consider it. On the other hand, if I sustain the objection, that means the evidence is excluded from the trial and you may not consider it. You should only consider that testimony and those exhibits that are admitted. You should not assume or infer anything about evidence which I may have excluded. If you happen to hear or see evidence that I end up excluding from the trial, you must disregard it entirely in your deliberations and in arriving at your verdict. None of my decisions and nothing that I say or do during this trial is evidence. My decisions and remarks do not mean that I favor or lean to one side or another in this case. I'm only interested in seeing that this case is tried fairly based on the laws and the Constitution of the state of Georgia and the Constitution of the United States. Sometimes I may need to deal with the lawyer's motions or objections without you being here in the courtroom, and if so, I will excuse you to the jury room. We will try to limit such interruptions, and we ask you please be patient when they do happen. So the trial will proceed as follows. First, the attorneys can give what is called an opening statement. No attorney is required to make an opening statement, and the opening statements are not evidence. They are simply an introduction to the evidence, a preview or outline of the expected evidence. The state goes first because they have the burden of proof. The second phase is the presentation of the evidence, and the third phase is the closing argument or summation. The attorneys may give closing arguments or summations where they discuss the law that applies to the case and how they believe you should consider the law in light of the evidence. They may also point out evidence that they believe supports their position. Remember, what the lawyers say in closing arguments is not evidence. The goal of a closing argument is to persuade you to decide the case in their favor. And the fourth phase is the jury charge, and that is me explaining to you the specific law that applies to this case. We will then send you to the jury room to begin your deliberations and to reach a verdict. It is important that you pay close attention during this trial. If at any time you cannot hear or see any evidence, or if you are suffering from any discomfort that may distract you, please raise your hand to get my attention and let me know. And we will do everything we can to make sure you can hear and see the evidence and give it your undivided attention. If you need a break at any time, also raise your hand and let me know. Also, one of the jurors, I recall, has an eye issue. Okay. If it would help you to sit in the front row near the TV displays, because the evidence will be projected on the screen, then I would just ask that one of the jurors switch seats with you so you could be able to see as best as possible. Okay? All right. Now, if you can see it okay from where you are, then we're fine. But if it helps you to be closer, you can see that. Okay, very good. All right, jurors are not allowed to question witnesses. If you have a question that comes up in your mind while the evidence is being presented, please keep in mind that you have not heard all the evidence, and your question may very well be answered by the time the rest of the evidence is presented. You should consider the evidence with an open mind, and you should not reach any final conclusions until the trial is over. Do not jump to any conclusions before all the evidence is presented. Now, to maintain the integrity of the jury system, I remind you that you must decide this case based only on the evidence submitted during the trial and the law I will explain to you. You may not conduct any research on your own about this case or about any people or places mentioned during the trial. You may not visit any places mentioned in the evidence. You may not refer to any books or documents that were not admitted during the trial. You may not use dictionaries or other reference materials to look anything up. You may not use Google, YouTube, or any other internet, I don't even know what the word would be, internet access, websites, blogs, or anything else, or any electronic devices or any electronic media to get any information about this case. Nor should you use any of these sources to get information about legal terms or about the law. And finally, you may not read or listen to any accounts of this trial that may appear in the news, on TV, on the radio, online, in print, or in any other fashion. And again, you'll be subject to penalties for contempt of court if you violate these instructions. Remember, you are the ones who have been qualified as fair and impartial jurors to decide this case. No other influence should affect your decision. For that reason, you may not discuss this case with anyone, including family and friends, or let anyone discuss this case with you or around you. This includes discussing or sharing information by email, texting, blogging, or any form of social media. Until actual deliberations begin, that is, and after you've heard all the evidence, the lawyer's closing arguments on the law that applies to this case, you may not discuss this case even among yourselves, in the jury room during any breaks, recesses, or anywhere else. Now, we've given you notepads and pens, so you can take notes if you would like. You're not required to, but you are certainly welcome to. If you do take notes, please remember to not let your note-taking distract you from paying full attention to the evidence and to the witnesses. And also, you may not share or discuss your notes with anyone until you start deliberating at the conclusion of the trial. Notes are evidence. Notes are not evidence. They are simply memory aids. They are not more important than your own impression or memory of what the evidence may have been. While you may consider, during deliberations, another juror's notes to refresh your memory, you should rely on your own memory of the proceedings. Do not be influenced by the notes of other jurors unless their notes help you in determining your own independent memory. You must leave your notes in the jury room except when you're in the courtroom, and they will be secured in chambers overnight, and so nobody will have access to them. And they will be shredded at the end of the deliberations. This is really important. You will not get a transcript of witnesses' testimony. So you're going to have to remember, in whatever way works best for you, what the witnesses said on the stand. So during deliberations, if you have a question comes up, well, what did the witness say about such and such? And you ask, I'm going to tell you, you have to remember the testimony based on your collective recollection. There is no transcript available to you. All right. I think those are all the preliminary instructions I have. So we are ready now to proceed with the opening statements, and the state gets to go first. Thank you.
Just a moment.
Yeah, that's fine.
Good morning. The thread that runs through this entire story, really from the very beginning, is a desire, a thirst for knowledge. something on a spiritual level, something that transcends eras, cultures, and distance. Young people experiencing and coming out into the world on their own for the first time, longing for a kind of knowledge, spirituality, of belonging. Eligio Bishop promised that. He promised that he had all of the answers to all of their questions, the answers to their prayers, and that he could fill their spiritual voids. He alone could speak the truth. He alone showed them what they could be, in tune with nature, living off the land, a communal sort of paradise. Janae Newell first saw Eligio Bishop and his group in a restaurant where she worked. She was 22. It was about 2018. She was intrigued. The way they dressed, the way they talked, they seemed so genuine. She kept in touch with the defendant online, and she was planning a trip overseas to Bali. Instead, she left home and joined the defendant's group. At first, it was everything Janae had hoped. The sense of community and the idyllic tropical locations masked the trouble brewing. His word was law. Some of the rules didn't make sense. They couldn't use the bathroom inside. They only ate when he was hungry. He chose who they could date or with whom they could sleep. When somebody disobeyed a rule or was having a bad day or did anything to upset the defendant, they became the enemy, the scapegoat, the focus of his ire. They were the problem, and the group followed the defendant. As they traveled around from Decatur, Mexico, Hawaii, California, Belize, Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, and finally back to Decatur, things only got worse. It became power for power's sake, and he held all of the power. Janae left. She flew back to Georgia, but she was still longing for something, for belonging, and things at home really weren't going all that great. For a time, she resorted to selling her body. And after a while, after watching the group from afar online, Janae went back. This time, they were in Puerto Rico. Janae noticed that things were more volatile, more violent. She stayed for a while, and then she left again for a second time. Janae went back for the last time in 2021. The group was in Decatur at a home on Arbor Chase. There were about 20 members staying there at the time. Now, one thing about the group, when a person joined this group, they were given a new name. And so during trial, you will hear folks referred to by their legal name, and you will also hear them referred to by the name they were given in the group. And this is confusing, I know. We have created a demonstrative aid, basically just a big whiteboard, that lists several of the people you will probably hear about this week. And you may want to take notes as well if that's easier for you so you're not glancing over there. But Janae Newell, she was known by Nateri. So you may hear Janae referred to as Janae. You may hear her referred to as Nateri. Kendra Carter, whom you will hear from this week, Kendra went by Sheba. Brianna was Syrian. Velvet was Nana. Aaron Dixon, he went by True or Ace. And you will hear from all of them this week. Courtney Townsend went by Solar. You may also hear about some other members. Portia Wade goes by Aya. Tanisha Dulay is Malia. Kayla Buckner is Ephraim. And so on. Another thread that runs through this case is power. This defendant's desire to maintain power over the people in his group. How he accomplished that? and what he did with that power and control. By 2021, when Janae was back in the group, she will tell you the defendant would get angry over the smallest thing. He would order one member to hit another member. He lashed out at Miss Dulé, Malia, one time when she tried to leave. What you will hear from all of the former members who testified this week, from Aaron, from Kendra, from Janae, Brianna, and Velvet, from all of them, you will hear that there was this atmosphere of fear and violence within the group, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Who was going to be next? Power, accomplished through the ever-looming threat of physical violence. The second part of that preface, though, what the defendant did with that power. The answer to that, the evidence will show, is sex. You will hear, again from the former members, that this defendant had his choice of the women in the group. It was understood. Nobody said no to the king. To God, to him. You will hear from Janae, from Kendra, from Brianna, what he did and how he did it. And all this time, from 2018 to 2021, as it turns to 2022, all of this time he is fostering an us against them attitude. The outside is hell, he said. They don't understand. They are out to get us. So separate from all loved ones, family and friends, reliant on him for every meal, shelter, affection, community, not surprisingly at work. When the defendant's anger was focused on one, the others piled on. When he ordered one to hit another member, they complied. When he demanded sex from Janae, or demanded that she allow him to film it, she went along. Now I want to be clear. Janae went back to the group multiple times. There were times that there was consensual sex between Janae and this defendant. And obviously, it will be obvious to you, obviously she cared very deeply about him for a period of time. His name was tattooed on her body. And she did allow him to film her. That all happened. But it happened in this broader context. That matters. And I think it will matter to you in this case. In late March of 2022, Janae had become a little disillusioned, a little unsure about the group. It was nighttime, March 24th, 2022, and it was another of his long, long talks. They were sitting downstairs, and Janae just wasn't feeling it. And her face showed it. He told Zoka, Jayon, that she should keep Janae in line. It was understood what that meant. And a little while later, something happened. Janae made another face or something. And Jayon smacked Janae. He didn't stop it. It was Janae's fault. Her turn to be the scapegoat, the them in this ever-present us against them. At his urging, implicit or explicit, Jayon smacked Janae again and again. He ordered Janae on her knees, and Jayon smacked her again. Janae had enough. She was leaving again, and she said as much. And nobody stopped her, at least at first. She got her bag, started to pack a few things, retrieved some of her art that was stored in a shed outside, and she said some goodbye. The Uber was waiting outside. There was some dispute about a phone charger as she's walking out the door. Then someone said, "The king is calling. Will you answer the king's call?" And Janae did. She asked the Uber to wait. This would only take a second. She walked upstairs to say her final goodbye. When Janae reached his room, he grabbed her in his arms and literally would not let her go. She was crying, and she told him she had to leave, that he would not let her go. He asked for sex one last time. She told him no. She had to leave, but he would not let her go. He asked again and again. She said no, again and again. He put her on the bed. She told him no. She had to leave, but he would not let her leave. He asked again, one last time. And finally, after countless times of saying no, realizing she wasn't leaving that room unless she gave in, she said, okay. They started having sex and she pushed him off. But even then, he would not let her leave. He flipped her over and penetrated her from behind as she was crying. Janae escaped the next morning before anyone woke up. She went to her friend Kelly's art studio, then to a shelter and on from there. She never went back. In the meantime, on March 28th, Janae received messages online asking if she was back in the group. She was confused. She realized they thought she was back in the group because 4 videos have been posted to the defendant's Twitter account showing him and Janae having sex. He posted these videos on March 27th, after Janae had escaped. The evidence will show he posted these videos without Janae's consent for the purpose of harassing her. Yes, the videos depict consensual sex well before Janae left. And yes, Janae probably knew that the defendant was reporting the sex. And they may have been online before. But they were posted on March 27th without Janae's consent for the purpose of harassing Janae. Go back to power, that thread that runs throughout this case. The evidence will show his attempt to maintain that power, to demonstrate that power, even after Janae escaped. The final overarching thread that runs through this case is the online presence and life that many of these young people live. Much of the day-to-day lives of this group were streamed online, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Vigo. And many of the former members that will testify this week still maintain large online presences today. As the former members will tell you, what happened in the group actually happened. This wasn't acting for the cameras or the clicks. The violence was real. The emotional manipulation was real. And the tense threat of looming violence was real. In addition to Janae, you will hear the stories of Kendra Carter, who joined the group in late 2018, of Brianna Jacobs, Aaron Dixon, and you will hear from Velvet Marquette. For a while, Velvet was married to the defendant. They have a daughter together. She was in the group for a while, up until about 2020, and you will get to hear her story. At the end of this case, after you have heard all of the evidence, the judge will instruct you on the law that applies to this case, including the law that sexual intercourse obtained through fear or intimidation is not consensual. After you have heard all of the evidence, which includes the testimony of witnesses, we will once again address you and ask that you return a verdict which speaks the truth, the guilty verdict.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Judge. One last gentleman. In March of 2022, that is the date that this alleged incident happened. The state has spent a lot of time talking to you about a lot of things, but they didn't talk to you about March 24th, 2022. That's what you're deciding on. Not what happened in 2021, 2020, or any time before that. They're going to avoid March 24th, 2022. March 24th, 2022, Janae Newell, who is the alleged victim in this case, alleges that this young man here, Elijah Bishop, raped her. The judge is going to tell you what rape means, but that he penetrated her against her will and with force. That's what she said happened on March 24th, 2022. That she also was falsely imprisoned by Elijah Bishop, meaning that she was not allowed to leave. Okay? That's what the state has proved you. Not about anything that happened anywhere else, not about other people, but it's what happened between him and her on March 24th, 2022. And I'm going to ask as you go through this trial that you listen and focus on that day. Because right now, this is going to be a can't see the forest for the trees type of case that the state is presenting to you. Additionally, there are charges for revenge porn, for posting something on the internet in order to essentially embarrass her or harass her. So let's go back and look at March 24th, 2022. This defendant, along with some other people, were living in a house. This essentially was a polygamous relationship. This defendant had a woman that was considered to be his queen, and then there were other women that were there as well. We're not here to hide it from you. That's not what he's charged with, okay? Now, on March 24th, 2022, Janae Newell indicated, based on what she told law enforcement, that she wanted to leave the house. And so she wrote text messages on that day that will be evidence. But other things that are going to be extraordinarily relevant about March 24th, 2022 is her interview with law enforcement and the different things that she did. So on March 24th, 2022, she ended up leaving the house the next morning, which was the 25th. Okay. But on that day, between the time she talks to law enforcement, which is not until April of the next month, essentially, 2 weeks later, she gives an interview to law enforcement. She never actually tells law enforcement that Mr. Bishop raped her. What she did was she came down to the DeKalb County Courthouse and she attempted to get a misdemeanor warrant against Mr. Bishop. And in that misdemeanor warrant, she didn't say anything about being raped. She said that he had posted some videos online that she wanted him to take down. That was it. She never said anything about being falsely imprisoned because she had to make a sworn application in front of a judge in order to get a warrant taken out. So they scheduled a hearing. In that, there was never a single word about rape. She also gave an online interview with a YouTube interviewer, another person. In that interview, she described making love, is what she described. She used the words making love. And I know these are difficult terms to hear. We're adults, so we don't have to have adult conversations. Rape, obviously, is a act that there is no love in. There is two people, and an act happens, and one of them obviously doesn't want it. The other one forcibly does it. You cannot get further from that when you use the words making love. So in her interview that was recorded with YouTube, where she was interviewed by another person, she described going back into the house and that she and Mr. Bishop made love. Those were the words that she used. She additionally said that she believed Mr. Bishop was faking it, that he didn't really love her, but that he was faking being excited to have intercourse with her. Not a single word about rape, not a single word about false imprisonment. After that, she gives another interview, this time to police. And when she, in the first 5 minutes of the interview to police, she describes that they are making love. That's the words that she used. She does not use anything about rape. It's not until much further in the interview where the police ask her, well, was this consensual? And her words were, I don't know. She never says rape. She also speaks to Eva Wilson right after, on the night of the 24th, by text message and phone call. That was her substitute mother. And Eva Wilson asked her, hey, what's going on? She never says anything about being raped. She never describes being forced to do anything. Simply put, she asked her if she can come and pick her up. This case is one where the goal of the state is to be able to show you a lot of other things, but you're to decide on March 24, 2022, whether rape took place. Now, addressing false imprisonment. The state's going to say, and they're going to put in evidence, or try to, that Mr. Bishop falsely imprisoned her. And you just heard the state through his words, and his words and my words are not evidence. But you just heard the state say that she left the house, she had called an Uber. I can't imagine how you would be falsely imprisoned if you have the ability to call an Uber. But she alleged that she was being beaten by another person. And so because she was being beaten by this other person, she decided to leave. That's what he just said. She packed her bags. Nobody stopped her from packing her bags somehow. She was able to get her paintings out of the storage. Nobody stopped her from doing that. They don't even describe, according to what he just said, Mr. Bishop stopping her from doing anything. She gets outside to an Uber that she's somehow able to call. And yet she's been beaten so bad, according to her. When she gets out to the Uber, she decides that she wants to go back in and say goodbye to a person who allegedly has treated her so bad for so long. That's not false imprisonment. You don't want to go back inside and say hello to a person that has been a person that has beaten you and mistreated you. So I ask that you pay attention to all those things. Additionally, the state just indicated in their opening statement that the videos that they are alleging that he posted subsequent to her leaving to harass her is what they're alleging, that those videos were actually posted before she left. It wasn't the first time these same videos were posted. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a complicated case, but it becomes extraordinarily complicated when we tie in a bunch of other stuff that doesn't have to do with March 24th, 2022. This case is about March 24th, 2022. And as you hear the questions that are asked of Ms. Newell from myself, from the state, and anybody else that's involved in it, focus on March 24th, 2022, and the statements that she gave to law enforcement, the statements that she made to her friends and family, the statements that she made by text message, the statements that she made to the magistrate court here in DeKalb County. Think about all those statements where she never says the word rape. She never says that she was forced to have sex. She never gives a description of what Mr. Covington just described to you at any given time before that. And I would venture to say that the state during this trial will never, before you put that in evidence, that at the end of the trial, all those things that I just told you, they won't put in evidence anything that controverts that, because that evidence doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. She described making love. And we're all 14 of you guys are adults. You know there's a wide discrepancy from someone making love versus someone being raped. Now, the state asked you during the 4-hour process, was it an issue with things being delayed? This is not about a delay. This is a totally different statement than rape. So please, as you listen to the evidence in this case, don't get lost on online persona. Don't get lost on multiple women being with Mr. Bishop. Don't get lost on what other people say. On this particular date, March 24th, 2022, at the end of this case, your minds will be unsettled and wavering, which law requires those to be satisfied in order for Mr. Bishop to be found guilty. And we're going to ask that you return a verdict of not guilty on behalf of each count for Mr. Bishop. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. All right. Call your.
How old are you today?
29.
And what do you do on a day-to-day basis these days?
I work. I serve at a Chili's in North Carolina, and I take care of my daughter,
And how old is your daughter?
7 months.
Do you know Eligio Bishop?
Yes,
How do you know him?
I met him online years ago, and I've been in his group for some time.
When did you first come to learn about Mr. Bishop?
Around 2017, when I saw him online with his group of people, um, just parading in nature.
And how old would you have been at that time?
I would say maybe my early 20s, 23.
Okay. And sort of what was going on in your life at that point?
Around that time, I was embarking on my own spiritual journey. I kind of lost touch with myself around that time. I was going through a depression as well. Um, I left the church because of things going on in the church that I deemed to be, wasn't right for me. And I was looking for God. So when I found God, it was in nature, and it was through his teachings of going into nature, Eligio Bishop's teaching going into nature.
So what was appealing to you at that point in your life about Mr. Bishop and what he could offer?
A lifestyle. It was about living in tune with self and the community, and about love and speaking righteously and being righteous, and also living with integrity and honesty.
And when did you leave home to go stay with Mr. Bishop?
I left home in 2020.
And at that point, where was the group?
The group was in Atlanta, Georgia.
And how old would you have been then?
Man, I would say around 25, 26.
When you first got to the group, were they in a house, an apartment, something else?
Yes, they were in a house.
Okay, approximately how many folks were there?
20 people, around 20 people, 25.
Okay. And how was it? Like when you first got there, what were your sort of first impressions?
This was the people that I watched for years. So I was very excited, and everybody was very welcoming. I initially met the group before I got into the home.
Tell us about that. When did you meet them?
So I met them at a party because I was invited. But also before then, they walked into my job. I was working at a raw vegan restaurant in Atlanta called Tassili's Raw Reality. And since then, they told me to hit them up whenever.
So, hold on, I don't mean to interrupt, but all right, so you're working at a vegan restaurant, and what happens?
When I'm working at that vegan restaurant, they happened to walk in the men. It was him, Eligio Bishop, and the men. And they recognized me, and I went up and hugged some of the men. And Eligio Bishop also recognized me and tried to flirt with me and told me to call him while he was leaving. But I never did really call. But his members actually, encouraged me to come visit more. And, I even gave my phone to one of them because they needed phones and I had extra.
Okay, so you said they recognized you. Do you know where they recognized you from?
Absolutely, online. I was a part of the online base of people that, agreed with their teachings. I would say I was a part of their group online for quite some time, and I traveled to Thailand and just to live the knowledge that they spoke. So they noticed me from online.
And so from the time that you met in person in the restaurant to the time that you joined the group in Atlanta, about how much time passed in between those two?
Excuse me?
About how long was it between when you met with Mr. Bishop and the other men in the restaurant before you moved in with them?
I would say 2 to 3 weeks, maybe.
And did you have any other plans going on in your life at that time?
Yes, I was going to quit my job, which I did, and move to Bali, Indonesia to become a yoga teacher. I had the ticket booked and everything.
And what caused you to forego the trip to Bali to go with the defendant?
The members of the tribe was encouraging me to become a member of their tribe, and just forget about my trip to Indonesia, just to become part of the family. They said it was part of my purpose. So,
And just so we're clear, when you say the tribe, what are you referring to?
Early Hill Bishop's Club.
When you, do you remember, you said it was 2020, when you first moved in with them, what happened to like any personal belongings of yours?
Usually you share anything with the cult. You share anything with the tribe. Everything goes to a closet, or sometimes the men would take away your belongings. I remember that they search. First, they search your belongings just to make sure you didn't bring anything that they didn't like or agree with. You know, they would throw away things if they don't agree with it, like some types of soaps or certain things. But yeah, it'll be searched and put away.
And when you came, did you have any like personal documents with you, like or credit cards or things of that nature?
Yes, I did.
And what happened to those items when you entered the group?
Well, per se, for me, for some reason, I was able to keep mine. But however, I was told to give all my money to one of the members, which was a man. So I cashed out everything that I have.
Were you given a new name when you entered the group?
Judge, I'm gonna object to what this has to do with March 24th, 2022. I don't think it has relevance to it. I would ask that we get that.
Mr. Coveney?
The context is key, and I believe that intrinsic evidence is what is necessary to complete the telling of the story. All of this is intrinsic.
All right, overrule the objection, you may continue.
Janae, were you given a new name when you joined the group?
The first time, no. The first time I joined the group, no. I kept my name, which was Nateri.
Okay, how did you get the name Nateri?
I named myself
And when did you, was that before or after you joined the group?
before.
How would you, when you first joined the group, how would you describe Mr. Bishop?
When I first joined, he was very kind, and he was very charismatic. Also the tribe, the cult, the tribe, they were also that way. I believe that he was very, caring at one point.
And were there rules in the group?
Yes, there were a lot of rules in the group. For one, the men weren't allowed to talk to the women and vice versa. And when I came in, it was very hard for me because it didn't make sense. So I made a complaint to Alethea Bishop, and he then went ahead and changed the rule around. But then after some time, possibly a week to a month, 3 weeks to a month, he changed it right back to women not being able to talk to the men.
What were the sleeping arrangements?
Everyone sleeps everywhere. There were people sleeping in the dining room, in the living room. Only Alethea was allowed to sleep in the master bedroom, though it wasn't his house. And all the other members were had even a couple. There was the times when we did have couples. The couple slept together, but Alethea had a set of women sleep with him only in that room.
And where did these rules come from?
Alethea Bishop.
Were you able to, was anyone able to say no to the rules?
No.
What would happen if you did?
You when you disrespect Alethea, you would be either go in the corner or around this time. This is what around this time. What I saw, you would either go in the corner or do squats or be reprimanded or shunned. This was the first time I was there.
Were there rules related to romantic relationships?
Yes.
What were those rules?
At the time, the first time I was around, he would put people together. He would say that they have a choice, not necessarily in my particular situation that I had a choice, because my choice wasn't accepted.
What do you mean by that?
There was a male that I wanted to be with that was a part of the tribe, and the tribe was polygamous, so he was already with a woman. So I believe that I could be able to be with him, but he wouldn't allow that. He would just say that he's the only one that's supposed to be polygamous in the group.
So I just want to be clear because you're using the word he. The man that you wanted to be with, what was his name?
His name is Courtney Pete Townsend,
Okay.
but in the tribe, the cult, his name is Solar.
And so you wanted to be with Courtney, and who was it that was not allowing that to happen?
Eligio.
And why was that?
Judge, I'm gonna object. I think that's speculation.
Response.
Do you, if I could rephrase the question.
Okay.
Do you know why?
Personally, no, but he would, always tell us that he's the king.
Oh, I can move on.
All right, sustained. Go ahead.
What did members of the group call Mr. Bishop?
He had many names.
Judge, again, I'll object for purposes of relevance. It has nothing to do with March 24th, 2022, what people call him in the group.
Mr. Coveney?
It is absolutely relevant. It's intrinsic evidence. It goes to consent. It goes to all of that.
All right, overrule the objection. We'll come in.
What were some of the names that Mr. Bishop was known by within the group?
He was named Baba G, Poppy, King, Chief, Father Tahuti, and that's all I know.
How did the defendant refer to the world outside of the group?
Hell. It was hell for us.
Did he say why it was?
Judge, I don't object. It has nothing to do with March 24th, 2022. His description of what happened in the world outside.
Mr. Coveney?
Same response. It does.
I'm going to allow the testimony, and if you want to have a standing objection
I
to,
would ask the court to make a standing objection.
of course. All right. Go ahead, but the intrinsic evidence and testimony is allowed.
Why did the defendant in this case refer to the outside world as hell?
I'm going to object that the question is based on speculation. Why he did it.
So I'll sustain that objection. Rephrase the question.
I'm sorry, did the defendant explain why the outside world was hell?
Yes, he did. He basically told us that the outside world was Babylon, and it was going to crash down, and Mother Nature is going to wipe it all out. But the chosen were able to stay with him, and the chosen are his disciples. So we consider ourselves his disciples and to follow him. He was the Christ.
Did he allow you to maintain communication with your family and friends outside of the group?
No.
When people left the group, how did he respond? When people left the group, how did the defendant respond to that?
He, when someone wanted to leave, we, as the tribe, would, excuse me, when someone wanted to leave the tribe, they would be reprimanded by him and by the cult members. The members would tell them how they're wrong.
That would be hearsay based on other people not testifying.
All right, I'll sustain the objection. You can't talk about what other people may have said other than Mr. Bishop.
Absolutely not. Okay.
So, how did Mr. Bishop respond when people left the cult? Not like what was said, but like what was his response?
He didn't like it, of course. Sometimes he would play off like we could leave. Other times he would just tell us mean things and call us names and tell us how wrong we are for leaving.
At some point, did you leave the group?
Yes, I left the group.
Okay, let's talk about the first time that you left the group. About how long had you been in the group when you decided to leave?
The first time I decided to leave, I believe I was in the group for about 5 months or so, 3 to 5 months.
And what happened, or did something happen that led to you wanting to leave?
Well, the first time I left is because I was voted out. And he told me, we had a meeting, and he was trying to tell me that me having feelings for another man was weak. And he should basically be the only one I should be wanting. So the tribe, the cult, went ahead and agreed with him to cast me out. And it was basically a test, like he likes to say. Um, Whenever we're told to leave, he expects us to fight for our right to be a part of his discipleship and a part of the chosen. So he would basically tell us, go ahead and go, you leave, go leave. And that's what happened the first time. I didn't take that as a test, though. I thought I was literally supposed to leave. So I made my arrangements and I left.
Where'd you go when you left?
I went back to my home in Atlanta.
About how long did you stay away from the group?
About 10 to 11 months.
When you were away, were you communicating with anybody within the group?
Yes,
Who was that?
Solar.
What drew you back to the group?
Solar.
And when you went back to the group, when you went there the second time?
No, I don't per se remember, but I remember the year. I believe it was in 2021.
Okay. Where were they at that point?
They were in Puerto Rico. And also, it wasn't just Solar that brought me back to the group. It was also Eligio Bishop.
Okay. Tell us about that.
One night at 5 o'clock a.m., I saw a message from Eligio Bishop. He told me that he had a dream, and he said that I was supposed to be with Solar. Now, around this time, me and Solar have been privately communicating. However, for some days, I haven't heard from him. So Eligio decides to text me and said, come back home. You're supposed to be with this man. I had a dream. So the next day we had a call, and he made arrangements for me to go back to Puerto Rico. He bought the flight and everything. So I made my way back to Puerto Rico in hopes and in expectations of being with the other man that I loved.
Had anything changed about the group while you were gone?
Yes, the location, of course, but the group got a bit more violent from the first time I've seen.
What do you mean by that?
I would say that I heard.
Judge, I object, I don't know the relevance of that, March 24, 2022.
Mr. Coven?
Believes that there's a standing objection on that ground. This is absolutely intrinsic. It is also covered by the court's pretrial ruling on one of the court's pretrial rulings.
Well, I think she could testify to what she actually witnessed it, but I think she's gonna testify to what she heard someone else say. That's probably.
That's a different objection.
Agreed.
So again, you can testify as to what you saw, you observed, you experienced,
Yes.
but not what someone else told you happened.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Did you yourself observe, as in see or hear anything in Puerto Rico that led you to believe that there was violence in the group?
Absolutely, yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Okay, I can account for 4 times that I remember. For one, we was traveling around the islands of Puerto Rico, and we ended up being in some kind of Airbnb. What happened is that I seen him,
When you say him,
Eligio Bishop. I seen Eligio Bishop basically abuse one of the women that he calls his wives. This one was Aya, but what happened was he placed his head on top of her head and pushed her back to where she fell back. Then I saw him drag her into another room And after that, I heard a lot of banging and certain things. And he left the room very angry. He was very angry because she was upset with him. And he was speaking to her, say you're going to leave me, say you're going to leave me. And when I went into the room after the banging, just to check on her, she was on the floor crying and had cuts and bruises on her, open cuts and wounds. So I went to her and I grabbed the aloe off of the dresser and I covered her cuts.
In addition to that incident, were there any other incidents of violence that you observed in Puerto Rico?
No. After that,
No. Okay. Was there anything else different about the group in Puerto Rico?
yes, the group had outside. The group had a downstairs and there was an upstairs. And there was a home that only he was allowed to be in. The others had to be downstairs in tents or huts or whatever.
And was that different than the sleeping arrangements in Atlanta?
Yes, in Atlanta, we were in tents.
Were you allowed to be in a relationship with Solar when you went back?
No, he kept me away from Solar a lot. He basically told me that he only lured me back there for content and it was all a hoax, that he was never going to let me be with him and he was going to initiate a fight between me and the other woman that he wanted me to be against, which was his Solar's first wife.
Who's that?
Her code name is Zilka, but her name is Jayon Marine Hamilton.
Had the teaching changed, like the defendant's teachings?
Yes, absolutely.
How so?
It went from being a part of nature and being one with the all, and we are all gods and goddesses that walk the earth. Then it just went to him becoming the Almighty God, Jesus Christ, God figurehead. And we were his, all part of his mind. And we did not exist. And the only thing that existed was him.
How long did you stay that second time?
The second time I stayed a month.
Why did you leave?
I left for two reasons. For one, I was sick and tired of being stuck in the upstairs. He kept me away from the commune. And he went to Atlanta to party and do all these other things while he had me and another woman stuck up in the house doing nothing, just wasting away there. And I was growing tired of it. I remember once asking to go downstairs just to be with the community of people that I came to live with, and I wasn't allowed to. So I got upset with that and I left. And I started to feel horrible because I couldn't be with the person I wanted to be with in the first place. The second reason is because of the abuse that I heard the day I was leaving, made me push to go. He wasn't there, but one of his members abused one of his wives there. And I heard the whole thing, the screaming, the traumatic, everything.
So that was when Mr. Bishop was not there, that was two other members fighting?
Yes.
Okay.
Also, I remember while I was in Puerto Rico, I remember another account that he's abused one of his women. I heard her screaming from the top of her lungs one night. And
Who is that?
this particular one, her name is Malia. Her code name is Malia. Malia was screaming from the top of her lungs, saying, "I'm sorry." And it woke up everyone in the home. And all you can hear is him beating on her really, really bad. No one did anything. I froze. I didn't know what to do.
And when you left that second time, was the group still in Puerto Rico at that point?
Yes, they were still in Puerto Rico when I left, and then they traveled somewhere else after I left.
How long were you away from the group?
Um, After that, I would say some months.
Some months?
Yeah,
Okay. Do you remember when you went back the last time?
I went back the last time, for the third time, December 26, 2022, or 21.
21?
Oh, yes.
Where was the group at that point?
The group was in Atlanta, Georgia.
And had anything changed about the group from the last time that you were there?
Yes, I believe that I thought they got better. The house was different, of course. There were no tents, but they were very much nicer to me when I came the third time.
About how many people were living there at that point?
It was just him and his women, so I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 women, and me.
Where were the guys?
The guys were in the Pennsylvania location. He has separated the women from the men again.
How long did that last?
That lasted some months.
Now that we sort of have the timeline set out, I want to talk about your personal relationship with the defendant.
Yes.
When you first joined the group, how would you describe your relationship with the defendant?
Friends. We were friends, but also he was the head in charge, so I was basically his disciple. Um, and then he would make me his lover and take me and become his wife. He's one of his wives.
Did anything happen, or when was the first time that something happened that made you believe the defendant had a sexual interest in you?
Yes, it was weird. Because I never looked at him that way. But when he told me, he said, I went to him and hugged him. That's what happened. I went to him and hugged him because I love to give hugs.
So let's put this on the timeline. Was this the first time you were in the group?
Yes.
Okay, about how long, do you know, like, was it right when you got there, a couple months, couple weeks?
It was some weeks. It wasn't right when I got there. Right when I got there, he was just, everybody was already coupled. He already had his chiefess there. Everybody was, in their relationships. Yeah.
Okay, so you said some number of weeks after you got there, tell us what happened.
I went up to him and hugged him, and he said to me, "You might be ready to have sex with me soon."
And what happened next?
After that, I didn't know how to take that. But when I went ahead and asked any other member, it was looked at as a high honor to sleep with him. So, but I didn't take anything of it. I just brushed it off, I guess.
Did you eventually develop a relationship with the defendant?
I don't want to answer that question.
At some point, did the defendant and you have sex?
Yes.
And was that first time when he hugged you, or was it sometime after that?
Sometime after that.
And
I went upstairs, and sometime after that, that was the first hug. And then sometime after that, I went upstairs to hug him again after good night. Like I said, I'm a hugger. And he held me in his arms after that. And the women that was in there closed the door. And he basically ordered me to take a shower. And he set up his closet with lights and candles and incense and music. And around that time, I told him, well, I wanted to be with Solar. And I made that known to him that I wanted to be with another man. And he tried to convince me over and over how that wasn't going to work. And he's this big chief, and he's this guy I should be with. long story short, he basically was trying to convince me to have sex with him that whole time, and I was kind of scared because that was one of my biggest fears. At one point, I didn't want to sleep with him at all. It was scary, and he just told me at one point I couldn't open up to him as he was trying to come examine me, and he told me it's because you're scared. You have to relax, and I breathed, and that's how it happened.
And did you share his desire for a sexual relationship?
No, I never wanted any sexual relationship with him.
And over the course of your time in the group, did you and the defendant have a sexual relationship?
Yeah.
And did you care about him? So, yeah.
Yes.
During the course of your time in the group, did the defendant ever ask you to allow him to film the two of you engaged in sexual activity?
Yes.
And was that something that you were initially wanting to do?
No, absolutely not. I actually told him sometimes that I was uncomfortable with being recorded.
How
But
did he respond to that?
he doesn't, he just brushes off. Like he just tries to convince you how it's good and he likes it and it's for a bigger purpose and how it will grant attention and all this stuff.
Did he explain why he wanted to film it?
Yes, the third time when I was in the cult, he described it as sexual education. So he wanted to post these videos for the community to know how it is to have sex, I guess.
And was there ever any sort of like agreement that he could do whatever he wanted with these videos?
Yes, he always would have his phone. He always had the access to do whatever he wanted. It was never a question or doubt anyone should have with him.
But did you consent to allowing him to distribute these videos forever or just in the moment?
In the moment when I was there, I was definitely, I would say, brainwashed. And he would definitely convince me that it was for a bigger purpose, which we all wanted to be there for the bigger purpose. So for me personally, I thought I was doing something good.
The last time you went back and when you were in the group late 2021, early 2022, did you observe violence within the group at that point?
Like the last time?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
And did you ever observe the defendant be physically violent with any of the women in the group?
Yes. I'm going to tell you about two of them that I remember. One of them being the most gruesome would be with who he deems to be his queen, which is Malia. She got an attitude or was just feeling down one day while we all were together. It was just me and the women and him, Eligio Bishop, in the bathroom. Um, Malia was naked, as we all, we don't have a problem with nudity in the cult. So she was naked.
Hold on one second. Can you guys approach for a minute? Please, I'm sorry. need stock attorneys to come in. Take a look at it.
So there needs to be more than that.
Let me pull up,
It's like this, but this is the one for the queen, not for the
There's a charge like this that includes this.
Right. Yeah, I know I have it, but I'm surprised.
I'm pulling it up now. Let me go check the book. I'll do that. You can't say. 1-0.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so, you agree?
I think it needs to be tailored to this.
Well, yeah, that was my next question, was,
Because I don't know.
use your mic.
I'm sorry. Has the court issued an order, has there been an order pertaining to the court's ruling on the 415, 440? Not that I think.
Yeah.
You didn't submit an order?
No.
We submitted briefs, and Caroline had indicated that there would be an order for it coming. I
Okay.
can submit an order, I wasn't asked for one, but
Okay, well, I'm kind of in between staff attorneys, so that probably got lost in the shuffle. My apologies for that. Okay, if you could submit a proposed order, I'm allowing them in. I think I said that at the hearing too. Did I?
you said it in an email.
I did,
Yes,
okay.
It was communicated
all
to
right,
us,
yes.
it's just not a file order.
Okay, gotcha. All right, well, let's get that order in place. Somebody's alarm is going
My
off.
wife said I don't know how to stop it.
Okay.
It's not.
That's okay. Yeah, mine did that too. I think there's something called theater mode.
Okay.
You could, is it an Apple Watch?
It is a lot.
But I can't help with that. I don't know. In order to prove its case in which counts pertaining to 1.3, do you have 1.34.10 in front of you? Okay, so in order to prove its case in,
It will be count 1 and 2.
Agreed.
you agree? Okay. Counts 1 and 2. Actually, Ismir, make me a quick copy, please, of, I think I just need, yeah, 21, 22, and pages 21, 22, and 23.
The reason I was asking about a order is the court had not, I guess, indicated what purpose it was in for,
Right.
what scope, and so that's kind of what I was hoping that we would see.
Yes, no, that's fair.
So,
Okay. All right, Mr. Coveney, can you provide that information, please?
So the-
What is your see if I agree with what your purpose is.
Right, the state's purposes were intent and motive. Primarily motive, but it was intent and motive were what were on the motion that we filed.
Okay. All right, counts 1 and 2. Intent and motive, so it would be, so it's not identity. All right, you guys approach and help me figure out which, I want to make sure I get this right.